The world of Xylos was a study in contrasts, a harsh canvas painted with the grim hues of industry and the fleeting shimmer of crystalline life. Its sky, often obscured by thick clouds of industrial byproduct, seemed to weep perpetually, drizzling a fine metallic dust onto everything below. The wind, a constant companion on these plains, hummed a mournful tune as it whipped through the skeletal remains of starships, turning every exposed surface into a rust-eaten monument to forgotten voyages. Here, amidst the acrid tang of decaying metals and the persistent low rumble of distant smelters, was where Kale lived. Kale was a Crystalli, or at least that was what the official records stated. Yet, to look at him, you wouldn't guess it. The Crystalli were known throughout the sector for their breathtaking forms, each individual a living sculpture of intricately patterned crystals, glowing with an inner light that spoke of their unique aptitudes and roles within their highly structured society. Some shimmered with the sharp, precise lines of a master engineer, others pulsed with the soft, flowing radiance of a skilled healer. To be a Crystalli was to be defined by this inherent beauty, to be valued for the clarity and complexity of your form. But Kale was different. His form was a muted, almost dreary gray, devoid of the vibrant colors and sharp patterns that defined his people. His surfaces were opaque, like unpolished stone, absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. There was no inner glow, no subtle shimmer to hint at hidden talents. He was, by all accounts, a defect and unformed. The elders, with their ancient, multifaceted forms, would cast their gaze upon him and sigh, their crystalline bodies vibrating with a quiet disappointment. He was an anomaly, a blot on the pristine lineage of the Crystalli. From the moment he had formed, emerging from the communal growth chamber with his dull, unremarkable appearance, he had been set apart. He was not offered the intricate training given to other young Crystalli, nor was he assigned a place within the structured society. He was simply there, a persistent shadow in a world of light. His existence became one of quiet desperation. While others moved with purpose, their crystalline bodies catching the light, reflecting their inherent value, Kale moved through the periphery, an unnoticed presence. No one approached him with offers of apprenticeship. No one sought his opinion. No one even made him a single offer for honest work, save for the most thankless and dangerous tasks. His days were spent in the sprawling, dangerous expanse of the Xylosian scrapyards. This was a place where only the truly desperate or the wholly mechanical dared to venture. Towering mountains of twisted durasteel and fractured hull plating reached towards the perpetually gray sky, forming a labyrinth of sharp edges and precarious balances. Here, the air was thick with metal dust and the faint scent of ozone, a constant reminder of the raw power that once pulsed through these derelict vessels. Kale's job, if you could even call it that, was to sift through the wreckage. He was tasked with identifying salvageable components, pulling apart fused circuits, and separating valuable alloys from the worthless dross. It was backbreaking work, the kind that frayed nerves and wore down even the most robust frames. For a Crystalli whose forms were inherently delicate, it was especially punishing. Yet Kale endured. He would spend long, silent hours, his hands surprisingly strong despite their appearance, meticulously working through tangled wires and corroded plating. He learned to recognize the subtle hum of a dying power conduit, the faint metallic taste of a rare earth element, the particular groan of stress in an overburdened strut. He developed an intuitive understanding of the mechanics of these grand fallen machines. He wasn't taught these things. He absorbed them painstakingly, through endless repetition and a quiet, almost obsessive focus. His only companions were the automated scavengers, hulking, multi-limbed machines that clanked and whirred around him, their optical sensors glowing like dull red eyes in the perpetual twilight of the scrapyard. They paid him no mind, simply performing their programmed tasks. He often wondered if they too felt the same isolation, the same cold indifference that settled over him like a shroud. Loneliness was a constant, gnawing ache within him. He watched other Crystalli from afar, their forms gleaming as they moved through the cleaner, bustling parts of the city. He saw them interact, their crystalline surfaces shifting with subtle expressions of emotion, their voices resonating with complex harmonies. He longed for connection, for someone to truly see him beyond the dullness of his exterior. But no one ever did. Only flies landed on his skin, drawn perhaps to the metallic scent of his labor, or simply finding him as unremarkable as the discarded metal he sifted through. No one made him a single offer, no kind word, no acknowledging glance. He was invisible, a ghost in a world of vibrant, shining life. Years turned into cycles and cycles into what felt like an eternity. Hope, once a fragile ember within him, had long since flickered and died. He had accepted his fate, to exist on the fringes, to be forever overlooked, to be defined by his lack of brilliance rather than by any intrinsic worth. He was just Kyle, the unformed crystalli of the Xylosian scrapyards, and that, he believed, was all he would ever be. The dust that settled on his skin, a grim testament to his life, felt like a permanent part of him now, indistinguishable from his own dull surface. The oppressive monotony of Kale's life in the scrapyards of Xylos was absolute. Each day bled, into the next, a relentless cycle of metallic dust, the clang of falling scrap and the gnawing quiet of his own isolation. He had long ceased to notice the sky or the rare, fleeting glimpses of actual stars through the perpetual smog. His world was confined to the treacherous terrain of twisted metal, his focus narrowed to the intricate guts of dead machines. It was in this state of almost meditative bleakness that the impossible occurred. A ripple of unease, then curiosity, spread through the automated scavengers. Their optical sensors, usually fixed on the ground, swiveled upwards, emitting faint, inquisitive chirps. Kale, accustomed to their predictable routines, paused in his work, tilting his head slightly. Something was different. From the swirling, dusty atmosphere above, a sleek, unorthodox vessel descended. It wasn't one of the grand, opulent star yachts of the wealthy galactic elite, nor was it a utilitarian, drab cargo hauler like those that occasionally delivered fresh scrap. This ship was different. Its design was a study in efficient purpose, robust yet undeniably graceful. Its hull was a deep, unreflective charcoal, broken by subtle, almost invisible seams. It had a clean, functional beauty that spoke of intent, rather than ostentation. It landed with a soft sigh of repulsor lifts, sending a small dust cloud billowing outwards, quickly swallowed by the constant wind. Kale watched, his breath catching in his throat. Visitors were rare in this sector of the scrapyard, and never of this caliber. Curiosity, a feeling he hadn't truly felt in cycles, pricked at him. A ramp, almost seamlessly integrated into the hull, extended downwards with a whisper of hydraulics. From its shadow emerged a solitary figure. It was a human. Humans were a species Kale had only ever seen in flickering holovids, or heard whispered about in the rare hushed conversations among the more adventurous scrap dealers. They were often described as adaptable, persistent, and somewhat unpredictable. This human, however, defied any preconceived notions. Her name was Alara. She moved with an easy confidence, her form lithe and capable, utterly devoid of the rigid formality Kale had come to expect from visitors. Her clothing was practical, sturdy material in muted tones, and her movements were fluid, deliberate. Her hair was pulled back from her face, revealing keen, intelligent eyes that seemed to absorb everything around them. She wasn't carrying any flashy equipment, no gleaming datapad or elaborate scanning devices. She held only a small handheld tool, its purpose unclear. Ilara's gaze swept across the vast, chaotic expanse of twisted metal and discarded technology. It was not the casual glance of a tourist, nor the predatory stare of a scavenger looking for easy pickings. It was a focused, almost analytical look. She wasn't just seeing the wreckage, she seemed to be reading it. Kyle watched her, unnoticed. He had instinctively retreated deeper into the shadow of a colossal broken engine casing, his dull form blending almost perfectly with the rusted metal. He expected her to move on, to head towards the main salvage points where the more valuable scrap was typically found. But she didn't. Instead, Alara began to walk slowly, methodically, weaving her way through the treacherous landscape of the Scrapyard. Her steps were sure, her eyes constantly moving, observing. She seemed to be looking for something specific, something elusive, something that wasn't immediately apparent to the untrained eye. She passed by massive energy conduits, still faintly humming with residual power. She skirted around collapsed sections of hull, their internal wiring exposed like grotesque veins. She ignored the glittering piles of polished alloys that even Kyle knew were worth a fortune. Her path, by some strange twist of fate, led her closer to Kale's hidden spot. He held his breath, willing himself to remain unseen. He felt a strange mix of apprehension and a peculiar, almost painful flutter of hope. What if she did see him? Would she recoil? Would she dismiss him like everyone else? Alara continued her slow, deliberate survey, her focus unwavering. And then, her gaze paused. It didn't land directly on Kyle, but on the object of his current, painstaking labor, a derelict engine impossibly complex from a forgotten class of freighter. Most would have deemed it beyond repair, a tangled mess of fused circuitry and burnt-out power cores. But Kale had been working on it for cycles, driven by a quiet, inexplicable compulsion to understand its intricate workings. He had begun to meticulously disassemble it, not to salvage its parts, but to learn. Alara's eyes narrowed slightly, her expression unreadable. She took a few steps closer to the engine, her head tilted, observing its broken components. Kyle was still hidden, but he could now hear the soft, rhythmic hum of her ship in the background, a stark contrast to the eternal mournful sigh of the Xylosian wind. She didn't immediately turn her attention to Kale. Instead, she seemed completely absorbed by the engine. She moved around it, running a gloved hand over its cold, scarred surface, her fingers tracing the outlines of once functional conduits. Then, her gaze shifted. It moved from the engine to the meticulously sorted piles of components Kale had separated nearby. He had grouped them by material, by function, by potential, for repair. It was a system born of countless hours of silent work, an intuitive classification only someone deeply familiar with such wreckage could develop. Alara's eyes, those keen, intelligent eyes, lingered on these sorted piles. She didn't just see scrap. She seemed to see the logic, the patient dedication behind their arrangement. And then, slowly, deliberately, her gaze lifted, following the invisible line from the organized components to the one who had organized them. Her eyes met Kale's. For a long drawn-out moment, neither moved. Kale braced himself for the usual reaction. The quick glance, the slight turning away, the unspoken dismissal. But it didn't come. Alara's expression remained neutral, curious. She didn't flinch, didn't show any sign of disgust or disappointment at his dull, unformed appearance. She simply looked at him. She observed him for a long time, her gaze unwavering. Kyle felt a strange sensation, like a long, dormant part of him was slowly waking up. She wasn't just seeing his physical form. She seemed to be looking deeper, past the opaque surface that defined him to everyone else. She observed the subtle nuances of his work, the almost surgical precision with which he handled delicate components, the surprising strength in his seemingly frail frame as he maneuvered a heavy power coupling. Most beings would have dismissed him at first sight, their ingrained prejudice against unformed crystalline preventing them from seeing anything beyond the surface. But Alara was different. She had no such prejudices. She saw a being engaged in focused, meticulous work, a being with an evident understanding of the complex machinery before him. She saw a quiet competence, a profound patience. She saw something beyond the dull exterior, a flicker of true aptitude that others, blinded by societal norms and superficial judgments, were utterly blind to. What Alara saw was the way Kale's fingers, despite their seemingly inert surface, seemed to feel the subtle imperfections in a conductor, the barely perceptible heat signature of a failing circuit. She noticed how his head tilted, almost imperceptibly, when he encountered a particularly complex problem, as if he were listening to the silent language of the machine itself. She observed the faint, almost invisible vibrations that ran through his form when he was focused. a minute resonance that hinted at an untapped sensitivity. She saw the quiet intelligence in his eyes, the deep-seated understanding that radiated from him, even through his silence. And in that moment, as the Xylosian wind continued its mournful song and the industrial haze hung heavy in the air, Ilara knew she had found what she was looking for. She hadn't come for scrap. She had come for value, true value, and she had seen it, glimmering faintly, in the most unlikely of places. The silence between Kale and Ilara in the heart of the Xylosian scrapyard stretched, not with the usual weight of Kale's isolation, but with an unexpected tension. Kale, still half hidden by the colossal engine casing, felt a flicker of something he hadn't known in decades. Anticipation. He watched Ilara, her human features unreadable, her gaze steady. There was no pity in her eyes, no condescension, only a profound, almost analytical curiosity. This was new. This was utterly, startlingly different. Ilara finally broke the stillness. Her voice was calm even, cutting through the low hum of her ship and the constant sigh of the wind. It was a voice that commanded attention not through volume but through its clarity and precision. "That engine," she began, her eyes still on the broken machinery Kale had been meticulously working on. "It's a Model 7X Gamma. Obsolete, of course. But the energy transfer matrix, even in its current state, hints at remarkable efficiencies." Kyle, caught off guard by her directness and her astute observation, could only stare. Most beings wouldn't even recognize the engine type, let alone comment on its internal matrix. His own people, the Crystally, rarely concerned themselves with the grimy details of such technology. They valued the output of machinery, not its intricate, dirty insides. Ilara continued, her words flowing effortlessly, each one a sharp, insightful observation. Its original design suffered from a critical harmonic resonance issue within the primary conduits. A design flaw, to be sure, that limited its power output and led to accelerated degradation. She paused, her gaze now fixed entirely on Kyle. "You've begun to dislodge the resonant dampeners. Not many would even know they were there, let alone attempt to bypass them in this condition." Kale felt a jolt. She wasn't just observing, she was understanding. She was speaking his language. The silent, mechanical language he had learned through endless, solitary hours. He felt a strange urge to respond, an impulse he hadn't acted on in so long it felt alien. The dampeners. Kale's voice was a low rasp, unused. They impede the true flow, restrict the resonant frequency. If you can alter the alloy, the crystalline structure of the housing, you could achieve a much higher energy yield without the inherent instability. He found himself speaking, sharing, his insights he had thought were meaningless, destined to remain trapped within his own mind. Ilara's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, a subtle shift that Kale, keenly observant despite his reticence, didn't miss. "Alter the alloy?" She mused aloud, a thoughtful hum in her voice. That would require a precise understanding of material science and the ability to detect incredibly subtle energy fluctuations. Most external scanners wouldn't even register them. "They're there," Kyle insisted, a quiet passion entering his voice, a feeling he rarely let surface. "Like a hum, a low vibration. If you can feel it, you can direct it, shape it." He gestured, almost instinctively, towards a section of the engine's internal framework, his dull fingers tracing an invisible line in the air. The inherent energy efficiencies could be unlocked, but the conduits are temperamental, volatile. One wrong fluctuation and it's catastrophic. Ilara listened intently, her expression now a blend of intense focus and growing excitement. She didn't interrupt, allowing Kale to speak to unveil the depth of his understanding. He spoke of the unique resonant frequencies he could detect within certain alloys, the way particular crystalline configurations responded to different energy signatures. He described how the smallest impurity could throw off an entire system, and how, conversely, the right subtle modification could unlock unprecedented power. He spoke, not of theories, but of direct, intuitive knowledge, gleaned from countless hours spent dissecting and analyzing the broken guts of machines. He talked about the subtle interplay of forces, the hidden symmetries, the unspoken language of technology that he, through his own unique sensory input, seemed to understand better than any diagnostic tool. When he finally fell silent, a slight tremor running through him from the sheer novelty of speaking so freely, Ilara remained still for a moment, absorbing every word. Her eyes, when they met his again, held a new light, not of pity, but of profound recognition. "Kyle," she said, using his name, a simple sound that resonated with an unfamiliar weight. "My name is Ilara, and I believe you are exactly who I've been looking for." Kyle blinked, trying to process her words. Looking for? Why would anyone be looking for him? Ilara stepped closer, her movements unhurried, radiating a quiet confidence. "I'm working on a project, a new generation of terraforming generators. They require precise manipulation of incredibly volatile, unstable energy conduits. The kind of energies that make standard protective shielding flicker and falter. The kind of energies that most engineers wouldn't even approach without a full sealed suit and multiple layers of remote control interfaces." She paused, her gaze sweeping over Cale's opaque form, not with judgment, but with a different kind of appraisal. "We've tried everything. Automated systems fail under the fluctuating energy signatures. Remote manipulators can't achieve the necessary precision. Organic specialists, well, they risk cellular degradation simply being in proximity." She took another step, now standing just a few meters from him. Cale felt a strange warmth, a faint current of energy emanating from her. Not physical heat, but something akin to hope. "You," Ilara stated, her voice firm, unwavering, "your unique physiology. What others deem a flaw, an unformed state, I believe it is precisely what is needed. Your ability to detect these subtle frequencies, your sensitivity to the inner workings of energy and material, and your apparent resistance to ambient radiation. It's not a defect, Kyle. It's a fundamental advantage." Cale felt a jolt that went through his very core. Advantage? His entire life, his dullness, his opacity, his lack of inner light had been called a defect, a mark of worthlessness. Now, this human, this Ilara, was calling it an advantage. It was a concept so alien, so profoundly hopeful, that it threatened to shatter the walls he had built around himself. "I need someone," Ilara continued, her voice softening slightly but maintaining its earnest intensity, "who can understand these conduits at an intuitive level. Someone who can interface with them directly, without being overwhelmed or destroyed by their instability. Someone who can literally feel the energy flow and guide it. Someone who can operate where no one else can. It is a dangerous task, yes, but it is also one that could change worlds." She extended her hand, not to grasp his, but in an open gesture of invitation. "I'm not offering you scrapwork, Cale. I'm offering you purpose, a chance to utilize the very abilities that have been dismissed, ridiculed, perhaps even feared. I'm offering you a chance to truly live." Kyle looked at her hand, then back at her face. Her expression was sincere, devoid of any hidden agenda. He had never been offered anything but dismissal and the lowest forms of labor. Now he was being offered a chance at something grand, something meaningful. And it was coming from a being who saw his supposed flaws as strengths. He remembered the gnawing loneliness, the constant ache of being overlooked. He remembered the sting of being called unformed, worthless. He remembered the dust on his skin, a symbol of his static, ignored existence. This was an opportunity, a dangerous one perhaps, but a chance for something more than the scrapyard, more than endless silent days. A chance to be seen, to be valued, to finally use the strange sensitivities that had always marked him as different. He didn't know what to say. Words felt clumsy, inadequate. He simply nodded, a slow, hesitant movement that conveyed the enormity of his decision. He had to accept. He had to take this unprecedented offer. He had to gamble on this human who saw him not as a defect, but as something truly valuable. He had to believe that for the first time in his long, solitary life, someone genuinely saw his true worth and was willing to pay, not just with credits, but with a chance at a real future. The ramp of Alara's ship retracted with a soft hiss, sealing Cale inside its utilitarian yet surprisingly comfortable interior. He felt the faint tremor of engines spooling up, a sensation entirely alien to his years spent rooted in the static decay of the Xylosian scrapyards. For the first time, in his life, Cale was leaving Xylos, leaving behind the perpetual dust and the crushing weight of his unacknowledged existence. A wave of apprehension, quickly followed by a thrill of unfamiliar excitement, rippled through his dull, crystalline form. Alara had given him a simple cabin, clean and functional, with a view screen that, surprisingly, showed the vast, star-dusted tapestry of space. Cale spent the initial journey simply gazing out, mesmerized by the swirling nebulae and distant suns, a universe he had only ever glimpsed in fragmented stories and fleeting dreams. He was on a ship with a human, embarking on a journey whose purpose he was only just beginning to grasp. The gravity of his decision, the sheer audacity of it, settled over him. Could he truly do what Alara believed he could? Could his defects truly be advantages? Their destination was a remote, unlisted station, nestled deep within a quiet nebula. It was a facility that spoke of secrecy and cutting-edge research. The station was sleek, almost invisible against the backdrop of space, its metallic surfaces absorbing rather than reflecting light. Inside, the air was clean and sterile, a stark contrast to the acrid atmosphere of Xylos. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of sophisticated machinery and the occasional hushed voices of the station's minimal crew. Alara led Cale through gleaming corridors to a large, pristine laboratory. It was a space dominated by intricate equipment, pulsing energy conduits, and complex holographic displays. In the center of the lab stood a series of massive skeletal structures, pulsating faintly with an internal light. These were the new generation of terraforming generators, still in their nascent stages of construction. They were beautiful in their raw, powerful potential, and terrifying in the volatile energies they were designed to harness. "This is where the real work begins," Alara stated, her voice quiet but firm, a hint of excitement underlying her calm demeanor. "These generators are designed to take barren worlds, dead worlds, and breathe life into them, to create atmospheres, stabilize climates, and initiate biospheres. But the power required and the precision needed to control it is immense. We're dealing with what we call proto-matter energies, raw, untamed forces that are incredibly reactive. One misstep, one uncontrolled surge, and it's not just the generator that's gone, it's the entire station." Cale felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lab's temperature. He understood the implications. This wasn't just dangerous. It was catastrophically so. "My team has developed the theoretical framework," Alara continued, gesturing to complex equations flickering on holographic screens. "We have the containment fields and the primary energy conduits in place. But stabilizing the core regulatory matrices, the heart of these generators, requires an interface that is both incredibly precise and inherently resilient. Automated systems burn out. Remote manipulators lack the tactile feedback, and organic beings, well, most simply cannot withstand the ambient radiation fields generated by these energies, let alone the direct interaction." She turned to Cale, her gaze direct and unwavering. "That's where you come in. Your unique physiology, what your people dismiss as unformed, is actually perfect. Your opaque crystalline structure, your density, your lack of traditional biological systems, these aren't weaknesses. They are a natural defense against these energies. Your form can absorb and refract dangerous energy surges, protecting you from the levels of radiation that would cripple others. And your inherent sensitivity, your ability to detect these subtle frequencies and vibrations within the conduits themselves. That's your true value, Cale. It's precisely what we need." Cale felt a profound shift within him. For the first time, he was not being asked to be less of what he was, but to be more, to embrace the very qualities that had isolated him. The dullness, the opacity, the sensitivity that had once felt like a burden, they were now his tools, his strengths. His first task was to work with a small, test-sized energy conduit. It glowed with a faint, unsettling aura, its energy signature fluctuating wildly. Ilara provided him with basic instructions, but mostly, she simply observed. Kale approached the conduit cautiously. He extended a hand, his dull fingers hovering millimeters from its surface. He closed his eyes, focusing, not on sight, but on feeling. He let his unique senses reach out, probing the energy field. It was like nothing he had ever encountered in the scrapyard. It pulsed with a chaotic rhythm, a discordant symphony of raw power. But within that chaos, Kale could discern patterns, faint undertones, tiny deviations that spoke of inefficiency and instability. He felt the subtle electromagnetic eddies, the minute temperature variations, the almost imperceptible changes in the conduit's crystalline structure as the energy surged through it. His opaque form, far from being inert, seemed to become a living filter, absorbing the dangerous radiation, allowing him to focus purely on the intricate dance of energy within the conduit. Slowly, carefully, Kyle began to interact with it. He didn't use tools, he used himself. He pressed his fingers against the conduit's surface, shifting his own internal resonance, subtly influencing the energy flow. He focused on a particular frequency, pushing it, pulling it, guiding it like a shepherd guides a flock. The engineers watched, their faces a mixture of awe and bewilderment. They had never seen anything like it. Their most sensitive instruments picked up only raw data. Kyle was interpreting it, intuitively understanding the nuances of the energy. With each successful manipulation, with each stabilized surge, Kale felt a profound sense of rightness. This was what he was meant to do. This was why he was unformed. His entire existence had been a preparation for this task. As he worked, a strange phenomenon began to occur. The dullness of his form, which had always been absolute, seemed to subtly shift. Faint, underlying patterns, like the ghost of iridescent lines, began to appear, pulsing with a quiet, internal light. They weren't vibrant, gleaming like other crystalli, but they were there, a testament to the energy he was channeling and the purpose he was finding. Ilara observed this transformation with quiet satisfaction. She saw the growing confidence in Kale's posture, the increasing fluidity of his movements. He was no longer just a skilled laborer. He was becoming a master. He was becoming himself. Her gamble had paid off, not just for the project, but for Kale. Over the next few cycles, Kale moved from the test conduits to the actual core regulatory matrices of the terraforming generators. These were vast, humming structures, each one a heart-stopping challenge. The energies within them were immense, capable of tearing apart less resilient forms. But Kale, protected by his unique physiology, thrived. He would spend hours immersed in the energy fields, his hands guiding, adjusting, stabilizing. He detected the minute imbalances that automated systems missed, felt the nascent instabilities before they became critical, and corrected them with an almost artistic precision. The subtle patterns on his form became more defined, glowing with a soft, steady luminescence. The engineers, initially skeptical, now treated him with a profound respect. They learned to rely on his unique feedback, modifying their designs based on his intuitive insights. He wasn't just performing a task, he was actively collaborating, his unconventional understanding adding a dimension to their theoretical knowledge that they had never considered. Kale had found not just a place, but a purpose. He was no longer the dust-covered outcast. He was the vital link, the irreplaceable component in a monumental endeavor. He was Kale, the unformed crystalli, whose supposed defect was, in fact, his greatest strength. And every single, precious, glimmer of light that now pulsed on his skin was a silent testament to the human who had seen his true value and given him a chance to shine. The sterile hum of the laboratory had become Kale's new symphony, a stark contrast to the mournful wind of Xylos. Weeks bled into months, each day filled with intense focus and the delicate dance between Kale's unique senses and the volatile energies of the terraforming generators. He moved among the immense, pulsating structures with an almost ethereal grace, his dull, crystalline form now glowing with a soft, steady luminescence. The faint, intricate patterns that had begun to emerge on his surface in Part 4 had deepened, becoming more defined, a subtle testament to the immense energy he now channeled and controlled. Alara watched him, often from a quiet corner of the lab, a look of profound satisfaction on her face. Her project, once a daring theoretical gamble, was now accelerating beyond all expectations, and it was primarily due to Kale. Automated diagnostic tools, once the backbone of their operation, were now merely secondary confirmation for Kale's intuitive readings. His ability to detect infinitesimal shifts in energy, to predict and prevent critical failures,